Okay, it's 7:02. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Simmons. I'm with both Sustainable Contra Costa and a member of Sustainable Rossmore, two of the sponsoring organizations of tonight's event. Thank you very much for joining us and joining the Green Sofa Cinema Series, a monthly environmental film series that is sponsored by the four sustainable groups, environmental groups in Contra Costa County. In addition to Sustainable Rossmore and Sustainable Contra Costa, it is 350 Contra Costa and Generation Green. Each month, the Green Sofa Cinema Series selects an environmental topic that we can all watch from the comfort of our own sofas, which is really nice. Then one night a month, like tonight, we all come together via Zoom to discuss the film and hear from a speaker who provides an important local perspective on the film's main topic. We hope you find the Green Sofa Cinema both informative and inspiring, and providing you with ideas about ways you can get involved locally to address pressing environmental issues. So we will start tonight by discussing the film, Vertical Farms, which explores the emerging practice of farming indoors by growing crops in vertically stacked layers using a controlled environment. Instead of soil, vertical farms use nutrient-enriched water and mechanical control of factors like lighting, temperature, and humidity to grow leafy greens and herbs, among other produce. You'll find vertical farms on rooftops, in greenhouses, in tall buildings, and in warehouses. As climate change makes traditional outdoor agriculture more difficult or even impossible in parts of the country and in the world, vertical farming provides an important alternative. It will help us avoid food shortages in the future. It will help provide safe, healthy food, particularly in urban areas. It will reduce food miles traveled to deliver food, conserve water and land for other uses, and connect city dwellers more closely to the food they eat. Soon we'll open the floor to all of you to discuss the film. You can start now by posting comments and questions about the movie in the chat, which is at the bottom of the screen. As we talk about the film, we'll hear from a very, very well-known local chef, educator, and activist, Cindy Gershen, about how she has incorporated vertical farms and vertical farm technology into the teaching and educational programs of the Mount Diablo Unified School District. And at the end of her presentation, you'll be able to ask Cindy questions and talk some more about the film. We'll finish about 8 p.m. As a housekeeping note, please keep your Zoom audio on mute unless you're called upon. So I'm going to start, the first part of this is we're going to talk about the film. And I hope you have watched it because it's a very interesting film. And I'm not seeing anybody having any questions in the chat room yet. So let me start by asking rather, did you learn anything about vertical farming from the movie that you didn't know before? And I'm going to do actually two questions in one. How do you think vertical farming can be made more successful worldwide? I see one in the chat room. You can also do this by raising your hand. When was the film? Boy, that's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I want to say it was about 15 years ago. I remember reading about the main character in the film. I shouldn't describe him as a character because he's the main figure in the film. He's not an actor. Really started this, I want to say about 25, 30 years ago, and just talking about it informally. And then he wrote the book, The Vertical Farm. And Cindy's on the screen in front of us, and she has the book in front of her. And she can tell us what the date of the book was. And I'm pretty sure the movie followed after the book.
Okay. I'm looking right now.
This is Dean commenting. The movie actually came out in 2015.
Yep.
So a little more recent than I had thought. I remember seeing a film about him probably, I'm going to be blunt, like 10 years ago. when I first became interested in the subject of vertical farms and what that might be in terms of the importance for our future, and for our kids' future, and for our grandkids. You can tell with the white hair, for our grandkids' future.
2010.
Is the book?
2010 is the book.
The movie, question about the movie shown recently, when the 4 environmental groups sent it out, they provided a link to the film. And if you haven't watched it before, I would encourage you to watch it now. It has aspects in it that are very informative and very inspirational. So Lisa has asked the question, what did you find most interesting about the film? Anybody wish to answer? And I need to look over at the pictures and see if somebody wants to raise their hand. What did you like about the film?
And I can start, Bob. I can say I actually found it a lot more interesting than I thought I was going to, because I hadn't realized the involvement of NASA as well in the development of this technology, and I thought that was a really interesting aspect of the movie.
And I see a former colleague, Linda Deschambault, has commented that as a former mayor, she was interested in the role of the cities. And that's a really good question to ask. I'm also a former mayor, for what that's worth. I think cities can play a really significant role in terms of their land use planning. I'll give an example. Instead of mandating X number of parking places in each 4-story building, what about mandating that 3 or 4 of those parking spaces be allocated to growing food in that type of environment, where you can provide the lights, where you've got the temperature controls, you got the moisture controls and all of that. And should that be a requirement of people who are building structures that are going to house people going forward? Thoughts, comments?
There's a comment in chat, it came direct to me, Bob, that said, from Kate, it's like local farmers markets moved indoors with less transportation involved.
That certainly is one of the advantages of indoor farming. There are some companies that are both national and international that are building structures that facilitate it. And then some of the foods you can buy in some of the local stores, Whole Foods probably being the predominant one, they're a bit more expensive. But they have the advantage that for the most part, they may have been picked the day before. They were grown in water. They did not have to be washed from the standpoint of being dirty with soil. They weren't impacted by bugs or other diseases. And by virtue of how they're grown, they're very, very healthy. So there's another comment. The ability to scale farming is too short. And Valerie made a comment about, which I would agree, the hope that by making farming technological, it will attract a whole new generation of people. I think you're going to hear from Cindy Gershen about that a lot in what she is doing with Mount Diablo Unified High School. If we could expand that to other high schools and other school districts throughout the Bay Area, that would be, I think, a really significant step. I do remember once when I was mayor, I went down to LA and visited a site called Local Roots. And it was a indoor farming center located inside of a warehouse. And the only person over the age of 40 in that building was me. It was really impressive to see how many young people were interested in it, because it's very robotic and it's very technological, and you need people to monitor the water, the pH levels, and Cindy will make this point. You think there's no math in all of this, but there is. And so we'll go from there. I will add, though, and this isn't part of Cindy's, it is possible to have one of these tower gardens in your backyard and to grow some of these yourself. And I have, and it's an interesting practice. It would work for anybody who is maybe just has a townhouse in a very small backyard. I have a larger yard, so I have some soil-based agriculture as well. But it is something that people can use to provide themselves with fresh, particularly leafy greens, although I've grown other things, and Cindy has too, during a good part of the year. So other questions and comments? Dean commented about food availability, and that's really important. When there's a company called Spread, which is out of Japan, which wants to build, pre-pandemic, it wanted to build a lot of factories in the US. It was interested in a couple things: finding a place where there's an employment center and finding a place near the freeways. Why? Because they got about a 20-mile range in how far they can transport the food and still make money and still be competitive with ground-based agriculture. They have the advantage that they don't have the waste that ground-based agriculture does, but ground-based agriculture right now is on a lot bigger scale, and that makes a huge difference. And so they were very interested in like the I-80 corridor and the I-680 corridor as places where they would like to consider having a factory, because it's near a large urban center and it's got good freeway access. And you don't think about these things as you or I might think about them as we want to buy fresh produce. But from an industry perspective, from a business perspective, those are some of the things that they look at.
The other thing that struck me, Bob, was that it mentioned in the film that currently food grown without soil can't be certified organic. It feels like that's kind of a crazy standard, and they may have to revisit the organic standard for the future of food, because it strikes me as a, as a quote unquote cleaner, almost more natural way of growing food, albeit indoors and so on. But it was surprising to me.
So there is an industry association now that is, I'm going to use the same word twice, associated with indoor growing. It is, and if you're interested in it, the site to look at is indoor-ag, just ag.com. They have an annual conference frequently on the West Coast where they bring in national speakers. But one of the things that they will be doing over time, and this takes some time, just like it did with the organic movement. When the organic movement started, USDA kind of poo-pooed it. And they kind of have done the same thing so far with indoor ag. And it's just a matter of the industry getting big enough and with sufficient visibility and sufficient demand that I think we'll see the definition of what is organic change. Now having said that, and this applies to ground-based agriculture too, you've got to pay attention to where you buy your seed to make sure that is organic, and that your water is appropriately treated, so it's not got a lot of chemicals in it. I mean, so there's some other, and then when you apply fertilizers, which you do with indoor ag as well as outdoor ag, you're applying fertilizers that are organic in nature. That's not hard to do, but it requires specific attention. I think there was one request to post the link to the movie here. So why don't we go ahead with that? And then if it's okay with you, Lisa, I'm going to suggest that that I introduce Cindy at the stage, even though she's very prominently on the screen in front of us. And I'm delighted to introduce her. She is an award-winning chef, a teacher, and an activist who has done a lot of really creative things in our community. She is a local leader in vertical farming. She created the Sustainable Hospitality Program at Diablo Unified High School and is founder of the Sunrise Bistro and Catering Restaurant, which her son now operates. Cindy has installed 40 vertical garden towers as part of a complete educational program at schools across the Mount Diablo Unified School District, which is in Contra Costa County, and where she has taught since 2012. I didn't realize it's been since 2012, Cindy. Her Mount Diablo School students, and I've met some of them, have grown nutritious produce ranging from lettuce and spinach to cilantro, chard, kale, basil, and arugula. And in the process, they've also learned important things about nutrition, recipes, cooking, food politics, entrepreneurship, and the environment. I think Cindy's going to tell us a lot of really interesting things. I look forward to listening to you. Cindy, it's all yours.
Oh, great. Thank you. Oh, man. So I'm going to share the screen right now. And hi, everybody. I think you all saw me. You saw my picture. You see me up here. So I'm going to get right to my presentation, let you know what I do in my class, and then we'll discuss it afterwards. So I go to view, present. Okay, here we go. Who am I? I'm a teacher I teach in the International Hospitality and Tourism Academy. We're an all academy school at Mount Diablo High School in Concord. And we do farm to taste. So how can I move this to the next one? How do I get it to go to the next one? Just move it up. Oh, there I go. So this is Cindy's classroom. So you can see the tower gardens here. That's what I have in my classroom. There's cilantro, that is Thai basil and Swiss chard and kale and different kinds of things. And they're all grown just using LED lights. We use 10% of the water. We have pumps, and you can see above is the electricity. We use probably, it might cost 40 cents a day, if that's what it costs for the lighting, maybe. But we're also, we have cells. Oh, what is that called? I'm just blanking totally on that. We're, help me with that, Bob. Solar. We have solar panels.
Solar cells, of course.
Solar, of course. This is me teaching the kids. This is our outdoor farm. We grow more indoors than we do outdoors. We have a 1/4 acre in the back, and this is about 1 parking spot inside, like you were saying. On the outside of my, and we have greenhouses, small greenhouses, and this is intensive, a lot of work. The kids hate to be out there. I stand 1 student in here and they can handle this whole thing. And they go once a week and check the pH. Here's my students cooking, which is kind of cool. Objectives: to understand the connection, this is what I teach, between what we eat, our health, and the planet. To be able to identify real food as opposed to processed food. To know the 6 essential nutrients, the importance of the limits for sugar, fat, and sodium, and how to read a label. Here's my influences. Jamie Oliver, of course, the kids love watching him. Alice Waters, Gordon Ramsay, and Yotam Ottolenghi, and he has made veggies sexy, and the kids love what he cooks. Okay, journalists and doctor influences. Carlo Petrini, of course, with the slow food movement. Michael Pollan, cooked in defense of food, Omnivore's Dilemma. Michael Bittman, Animal Vegetable Junk. You should read that book. It's amazing. Dr. Alan Green from Stanford. He is a pediatric specialist in child development, and he has a book out called, well, I'll show you the books later. And Dr. Robert Lustig, and he and I wrote the Fat Chance cookbook together, and I am his chef. 6 essential nutrients, of course, is water, the forgotten nutrient. We've got your proteins, we've got your carbohydrates, we've got your fats, we've got your vitamins and your minerals. Sugar, fat, sodium, and fiber. I teach this. You know, what is sugar? What is, how many teaspoons a day to stay healthy? You know, what is the maximum amount? Most children do not know that it's 24 to 36 milligrams of sugar. Most kids eat between 150 and 200. We're blowing out our children's health and their livers along with it. Fatty liver syndrome is the same as cirrhosis of the liver. In fact, the only people that used to get type 2 diabetes were alcoholics. We look at the fats, it's the saturated fats. We try to keep the kids eating avocados and olive oils and good fats instead of eating all this processed food. Sodium, of course, is high in processed food, and we want the kids to eat more fiber, which is things that come from, things that grow. Carbohydrates, fiber grows anything from the ground, including the tower gardens. We teach them how to read a label. The difference between juice and soda is not very much. 19 grams in one box of juice. There is no fiber to minimize the impact on the liver from the sugar that's coming from the apples. Even if it says 100% apple juice, organic. They said, what if my grandmother picks the apple and juices it? I said, I don't care how you get it. Sugar impacts the liver, and you want to minimize the amount of impact on a child. Same thing with fiber and Doritos. Kids will drink a soda or drink juice with their Doritos, and we're killing our future. Diabetes associated with processed food. I teach about heart disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer, and what to avoid. And I also teach about the triple bottom line and sustainability, social, people, dealing with community education, equity, social resources, health, profit. Your business needs to stay profitable, but you have to be conscious of what we're doing to the planet, and you've got to take good care of your employees. A lot of businesses are moving towards the triple bottom line. Here's a few of the businesses that are doing that. McDonald's, by the way, does not operate from the triple bottom line. They operate from the bottom line. Here are the books I recommend. Dr. Green, Raising Your Baby Green, Alice Waters' Simple Food. Otam Ottolenghi has Jerusalem Plenty. Slow Food Nation from Carlo Petrini, My Fat Chance Cookbook. Metabolical is a new book that's out by Dr. Robert Lustig, and it talks about processed food, nutrition, and modern medicine. Michael Pollan's 4 Rules, Jamie Oliver's Food Fight, Gordon Ramsay, and Mark Bittman. The future grow. If the pandemic didn't hit, we wanted to grow year-round and feed our community. We want to connect the college and career. So we're already connected to UC Davis, and oh boy, if you ever get a chance to go up and see their greenhouses and what they're doing. We've been going up to UC Davis for the last 5 years, and in fact, I brought them a tower garden, and they've been growing things in the tower garden within their big, everything is moving in the direction of greenhouses and sustainability and minimizing the amount of water that you're using. Like I said, 10% of the water on these greenhouses, on the tower gardens. Let's see. Call to action. How can you help us? You can get fingerprinted through the Mount Diablo Unified School District to become a volunteer, and you can donate your time. How can we help the planet? We can teach you how to cook. We can teach you how to have and maintain your own sustainable garden at home. We can teach you how to grow plants in a tower garden. We can teach you about recycling and composting, because that's what we do. I showed my students the movie, and I have also the book that we read in class. I try to bring to my students as many things that are happening in the world. I brought the towers 10 years ago. I guess it's been about 10 years. I took 2016, not 10 years. In 2016, we went to, I took my seniors to the South Bronx, and we went to see the gardens, the tower gardens that they had there at a Title I school that is similar to our school. So we got into competition with them, and they had 6 of them and I got 10, and then they got 20 and I got 40. And I love good competition. We've been to Florida to the Epcot Center, and boy, you should see the growing and the things that they're doing there. So every year I take my students somewhere to a university, a high school, and we visit a city to see what they're doing, because the future, if you don't get these things into the school system, you can forget about the cities doing. Need a workforce, and we've got to inspire these young people to want to be that workforce. I know I'm a hard worker, and so are you, Bob, but really we're kind of like past having that as a job, but this is the job of the kids for the future, and they're very excited. DVC is moving in this direction. because they've got big greenhouses. If you've been out to Atlantis out on Highway 4 to see what Carolyn Finney is doing with her farm that she's got going, and she says to me, oh my God, I'm going to move indoors. This is too hard. You have to deal with the rain. You got to deal with the bugs. You got to deal with the pollution. All of the things that you have to deal with that I don't have to deal with indoors. As far as I can address the organic, because the fact organic means it's all natural, and the nutrients that we put into the water are synthetic, even though they're okay. It's like vitamins, but vitamins are still a process. And so they're going to have to figure out how they're going to do it. But I say, you know, get over yourself about the organic when it comes to that. We've got people to feed, and I just want to see kids eating more fruits and veggies. I want to see them having cleaner air. When you have a tower garden in your classroom, it cleans the air because it takes in the carbon dioxide and it puts out oxygen. It's very soothing to have that. We have them indoors, and you can also have them outdoors. So I'm going to open it up. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask me? Would you like to come and get your fingerprints, and we'll teach you how to do tower gardens, and we'll teach you to cook, and we'll share everything that we do and inspire you, because that's what education is about. Dean.
Yes, Cindy, great presentation. Thank you so much. Curious, what do you think is the scalability potential, you know, just at a large scale commercial level for vertical farms? I mean, how much can we hope to feed people using vertical farms? What kind of impact would it have on climate change? And lastly, also, maybe give us an array of what food is potentially grown via vertical farms. Certainly a lot of greens and produce.
Well,
Is the sky the limit?
yes, sky's the limit. It all has to do with the color, and you have to have the lighting have multiple colors. Like red is really good for flowers. What they've done at UC Davis is, as soon as we get our greenhouse, and this is what we were going to do before the pandemic, is they were going to send us their seedlings for cucumbers and tomatoes that they've developed that just keep growing, and they grow around and around year round. You do not need, they're self-pollinators, that you would have tomatoes and cucumbers year round. Well, you can, and cilantro, and you can grow it outside in like very little, it just has to have the water and the nutrients, and it doesn't need any soil. So I think it's the future. UC Davis says it is the future is now. Getting our industry to move in that direction, getting the cities and the infrastructure for it, but getting the workforce, which is why when it reaches the colleges and it reaches your junior colleges, like what's happening now with the greenhouses, the jobs in the future are going to pay. I mean, you just need one kid that checks everything, and he can make $100 right now. They can make $100,000 a year just being able to check pH, and you just need a farmer. I mean, it's, instead of needing multiple people to farm and to plant, to soil and everything, you need one guy that can run everything. I've got one kid that runs our 14 towers, and he's like a half an hour a week to do that. So it's time, it's labor. This is artificial intelligence will be able to handle this. So I think it's absolutely in the future. It's scalable, it's exciting for the kids, and the food is good. And you should come taste, you know, our kale and you can come now. I've got, right now I have basil, kale, and mint growing on our tower gardens. And it's really wonderful.
So Cindy, would you take a minute and just talk a little bit about the total sustainable hospitality program that you have there, that you're not just teaching the kids about how to grow things?
Oh no, that's what I just ran through my PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
I think you need to learn everything. I think that it's really important that you understand where your food comes, why it's important to keep the soil and the air and the water clean, why it's important when you eat this food that you're a living thing. And when I take them into the garden outside in the tower garden, and I turn the water off so things wilt, so do you see that what happens when you cut the water supply off to these vegetables, and in 2 days they're dying? I said, that's about how long you can last, 2 to 3 days without water. Headaches, irritable, not feeling good, acne, all of these things. So we have to teach them about their body and the impact of it. And then you can see the light goes on. By the time they're senior in high school and they've had 3 years of me, their palates have changed, their attitude towards food has changed, their attitude towards the environment. And it really needs to be presented to them, and not just in books, but actually it needs to be around them so that they can get the change.
So 2 questions, Cindy, that came in the chat. One was, you mentioned cucumbers and a variety of developed by UCD that didn't need pollinators. Can you talk a bit more about that? The second one, which came in earlier, talked about, I'll do it as a why, but why isn't Mount Diablo Unified? And this is not a criticism, by the way, it's not intended in any way as a criticism. Starting to incorporate a vertical farming, indoor farming discussion as part of its adult education programs.
Why has
I've never seen Cindy speechless before.
Because I'm going to be politically correct here.
Good.
So, okay, I'm a dreamer that believes you have to address all of it. And I think that just focus just on the towers is not enough. I think that you need to understand the whole environment, and that means a whole educational piece. That means shifting what we do. Right now in the state of California, and I think and we're beginning to see a change, because that's why I stayed at Mount, so I could just keep saying this is what you need to do. Ag does not want to have anything to do with foods and culinary. They want to be separate. The money that goes to the ag department is separate than the money that goes to culinary. And culinary, people aren't giving a lot of they've cut out home ec in all of the schools because they'd rather all the children learn about math, and they should learn about reading. And we're competing constantly to see that these kids are reading at a certain level and doing math and science at a certain level. And what we've done, and people are starting to get this and to identify, is that our children no longer have they don't have skills. They don't have the skill to fix their bicycle. They don't have the skill to cook. They don't have the skill to be a plumber. They don't have the skill to be a carpenter. And we've so educated them that there's not a lot of skills. And culinary is considered a skill, and ag is considered, I don't know what they're trying to bring agriculture back. So we have is people that want to spend money this way and people that want to spend it that way. And it's really all of a funding thing. And until we can get the community to see the value of that a restaurant really holds your health in their hands, and when you go in there, you basically asking them to give you food that's going to help you feel better. And how many of us think about that when we go out to a restaurant? And we have a society that is suffering. 60-70% of the people are suffering from a comorbidity of high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, all of the things that are associated with food, but yet none of us want to look at it. So it's a hard sell, because then we have to look at ourselves. And then you've got COVID that says the people that are being impacted by this are the ones that have comorbidity, and that, but nobody, they're subsidizing everything except subsidizing the food. And now we're giving children, and I'm glad you brought this up, because they're subsidizing, and all children are eating for free now, so that we can have in the schools they eat for free. And if you walked in and saw what they were giving our children, which is our future, you would be appalled. But I see parents walking right by as their school district food service are handing their children processed food, a Pop-Tart, no fat milk, because we don't want, and then cereal, and all of the packaging and all of the plastic. And where did this disconnect come from? Because we took out teaching this in school and changing the palette for those parents. And my goal is I'm looking to teach these young people, and it's working because I've been there almost 10 years. It is working because when they have children, they're doing it different. So that's, when you say I'm an advocate, we have to get our head out of the clouds, and we've got to start teaching and holding, people accountable. Like I said, I was at the school picking up my grandson, and these parents are walking by with taking their kids to sports, and honey, get your bag, and they're getting their bag of junk because they're going to take their kids for sports. I got my kids playing sports, yet they're not giving them the food and the nutrition that they need so they can get the most out of their child. So that's why it's not everywhere, because there
Cindy,
is a disconnect. Sorry. And it ties into everything.
It does, and I love your passion. We have a very practical question, which actually is a good question. Well, actually, every practical question is a good question. But it's really, do you grow your plants from seed? How do you start the whole process
Yes.
of getting to
I
the
grow
plant?
everything from seed. Everything is from Johnny's seeds. Everything is organic, the seeds that are coming in. I also teach, the history of food. GMOs, and this is what I learned from UC Davis, we have domesticated everything. There wouldn't be a vegetable, a grain, anything if we didn't change it, domesticate it, and move it around. We're doing that, at the college level. We all want bigger apples. We want all these different kinds of apples. They splice this, they do this, they bring it together. I just want people to eat more fruits and veggies. And I want them to stop polluting with all the plastics and buying processed food. And that's my goal. Grow more vegetables, grow them closer.
So Cindy, for somebody who lives in a townhome, who doesn't have soil that they can grow something in, but has space for a tower garden, how would you suggest they start? I mean, because it's a bit intimidating.
It is intimidating. And at any time, you can come to my classroom and I'll teach you. Anytime. But you need to also learn how to cook if you don't know how to cook. And you need to know what is the right thing to eat. I mean, it's a whole, like I said, it's a whole package. It's not just doing the tower. It's understanding what to do with the waste. It's understanding your place in the environment. It's sharing with your neighbor next door. It's doing community meals. There's a whole thing, there's a whole change that needs to take place for accountability and responsibility. That's triple bottom line. That's why my business has been there 40 years. I take good care of my employees. I think about the future. I think about the environment. I'm constantly changing and moving. Okay.
So one more question for you that I read about, which was, how do you grow without worms and composting, and the nutrients that they provide to plants that you put into soil?
You compost. That's what you mean without worms? I mean, that just comes if you put it in the ground. It's just.
I didn't state that well. How do you grow hydroponically?
Oh, hydroponically.
Where you don't have the advantage of worms and compost and things like that.
Well, that's where they use the synthetic, and that's the controversy that they have around being organic, and is it really okay to eat this? And that, that's what we're up against. What are the nutrients that they're putting? I mean, they use chemicals. They use chemicals into the water, and
so Cindy, there's another question about how is the water circulated?
oh, it's pumps. It's got a small little pump.
Can you bring up that slide again that shows your 16 or whatever number it was, tower gardens? I will just say I have 2 individual tower gardens, and each one has its own pump. But Cindy has put together a number of tower gardens, as you see there in that last slide.
Each tower has its own pump in the bottom, and it's a 35. They're pretty small. And they they pump the water up through here. There's like a tube, and then it rains down inside, and each one of these plugs has a little synthetic cup that it sits in, and the seed grows inside of that. Now, if you do, I've seen it done where it's just the nutrients, and they make like a tea, like a water tea. There is some, the Tower Gardens uses a nutrient base, and they check the pH, and that's what you have with your Tower Garden, right? The nutrients. Do you put that in there, Bob, and you check the pH?
Yes, I
Once a
mean, you
week?
have to.
Yeah, right. But when you're growing, there's all different ways of growing. And that's why it'd be worth it to go up to UC Davis, or if you go to Epcot Center, there's a lot of different technologies. The Tower Gardens happen to use, these liquid, they're not organic.
So a question for you.
But a lot of them they make teas.
Yeah.
And it's organic, and they have been running like that. Yes.
Okay, what is the largest thing that you've grown in your Tower Gardens?
The largest thing that I've grown, tomatoes. I had one out on my deck, and I did tomatoes. It's got to be a vine that can come out because the base is so small, and the root system that has to come out. I've not grown zucchini or anything like that, but I've grown tomatoes and green beans outside, cucumbers. I haven't done eggplant or zucchini because that's like a bigger plant. But I also have an outdoor garden too, that I fight the animals all the time with, because I live by the open space. But I didn't have to fight them with my Tower Garden.
Yeah.
I can put it right on my deck. And you can also keep it in your kitchen. If you have a big enough, you can put it in the corner in your house. My mom does that. My mom has one up in the mountains, and she grows year round.
So do you see any potential for root crops like carrots and potatoes, or is that still another generation away?
No, we're already growing that. But that's a different kind, not in the Tower Gardens, but in the flats. You can do that. You can grow carrots, and you can grow the microgreens and such that are really nutrient dense, and they grow really nice in trays.
So some people refer to this as hydroponics, but I think the better term is aeroponics, because
Yeah.
hydroponics refers to
Sitting in
using
the
a
water.
fish.
Yes. Well, no, it sits in water. So
Okay.
aeroponic is because the water rains down, and then the roots are left in the air
Yeah.
for 15 minutes to 30 minutes in between the raining of it. So it's really taking in a lot from the air, and the root system's exposed, as opposed to the hydroponics, where the root system actually stays in the water, and they're taking up nutrients all the time. What's great about the the aeroponics that I have in my classroom is when we go in, I have the kids, sometimes I won't put the nutrients in, and things will start to turn yellow, and I have the kids figure it out. Or I say, check to make sure that we have everything done the right way. Our pH, this is when the pH is too high, this is when it's low. Sometimes it'll get a bug, and it's because we haven't balanced things right. So I will purposely leave things out and then let the kids kind of understand, and they can tell by looking now, after they've been doing it for 2 to 3 months, they can see what's missing, or what they can do to mitigate whatever's happening if we get bugs and stuff. And you do get them inside. You'll get things in if anything goes wrong.
So are you familiar with any commercial settings in which the Tower Gardens have been used, like airports?
Yes, down at O'Hara, I think in Chicago, they have 40 towers right there when you get out in the area there. Down in LA, there is what was the restaurant that was downtown in Walnut Creek?
Tender Greens.
Tender Greens down in LA. They have, that's their barrier. I wonder if I have it on my cell phone here.
I was actually at the restaurant in LA, and it was interesting because
where they had
they had a row of towers on the outside area of the dining area, And the net effect was the flowing water created a very, very nice atmosphere for
Very
dining.
nice atmosphere. What's interesting, and I think I have it here, they harvest off of the towers, and what they harvest, they sell for $1 an ounce, which is about what, and they put them into the little packages. And they sold it in the, one of the places was selling it in their little grocery store. And I thought, oh my gosh, that was, and I took my students down there, and I think I have a picture of it. And then we went to this tiny farm. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yep,
Okay.
make it flat.
I don't know how to get it. I don't know if you can lay
Just make it
flat.
flat against the screen if you can. Okay, I think that's as good as you can do.
Okay, so this is this guy's garage, and he had these shelves all over his garage. And this was in Portland, Oregon. I took my kids 3 years ago, my students, and he was harvesting. He was paying the rent and one guy to work with him. He was paying the rent on his house. It was in his garage, and we were able to buy these microgreens in the grocery store at Whole Foods in Walnut Creek. He grew so many that he had his whole business. And it was like, whoa, the kids are like really shocked to be able to see that. So when you see those little packages of microgreens in the grocery stores, and this was, he didn't have anything, you know, where they said it was all sterilized and everything, nobody could come in. It was just growing, you know, I mean, his garage was clean, but he had shelves of it. And it was like, the kids were just like, oh my gosh. And you know, this guy was making a lot of money doing this. So I take my kids, my students around to kind of see all of the different things, and people are growing all over the place. And those packages that are in Whole Foods and Sprouts and such, they're coming from independent people like this that are, you know, doing their, in the state of California, there's this thing called the cottage industry, and you can grow greens and vegetables. And if it's under $60,000 a year, you're able to do it right out of your house. You can have a little business. So if you're making jams or cookies or anything that that you can't get food poisoning from, you're able to sell. So a lot of people have got little businesses going.
Cindy, are you aware of any other school districts that have a program quite like Mount Diablo does? And if not, how would you suggest getting other school districts interested in this?
Well, we do have, I'm part of the CTE for the state of California. So the problem, like I said, is funding. It's hard to get, they couldn't pay for someone like me in my position at school. They don't pay teachers enough. I'm there because I absolutely am passionate about what I'm doing. I love that it's an underserved Title I school. If anyone needs it, it's our kids. There's 22 languages that are spoken there. All these kids come from Bay Point. You know, my goal is to give them hope and to teach them how to take care of themselves so they can get a better job and hopefully get it themselves to college. Cabrillo College is changing. There is a lot of change happening in California. We got a setback because of COVID, but they're actually teaching this. And like I said, they're bringing ag and culinary together, which as soon as ag and culinary comes together and you put nutrition in there, you're going to see a shift. But if it doesn't come from the schools, you're never going to get it to happen. It won't be sustainable. And you've got to teach recycling, and you've got to teach mulching, and you've got, everything needs to be within the school system from kindergarten through 12th grade. And in a generation, you're going to see things change because it really needs to be in the schools. And I'm hoping, I've got a lot of students that come in and intern with me. And then what happens is when they graduate from college, they go to work for a hospital, or they go to work. They're not coming back into the school system because nobody can live on $4,000 a month and pay off you can't live in California and make $4,000 a month. So you're not going to see a shift in education in California until we actually pay our teachers. I mean, it's a complicated problem. You know, all the money is going to the top for different things, and we really need more at the bottom.
Well, Cindy, let me just
How
see.
I feel.
Okay,
Yes.
let me just see if anybody else has any questions. And it's a little early, but doesn't mean we, if there aren't any other questions, we can't proceed. And I'm not seeing any. So what I'm going to do, Cindy, is first of all, I'm going to give you a chance to say, do you have any final words for people participating in this to send them off after the talk?
Yes. Keep doing what you're doing. It's so wonderful. 15 years ago, when I started all this, there wasn't a sustainable Contra Costa. There wasn't all the people that were interested in changing. I mean, I'm 66 years old, and I feel like, geez, I'm looking at 14 grandkids going, I can't leave them. I gotta fight and work for what I can to make it a better world. And I think that's why we're all doing this. But if my fight I took to the schools, be an advocate for your local schools. At Halloween, just every year at Halloween, I buy apples and bottled waters and almonds and such in little packages and nets to give out to the kids. I try to live and practice what I preach. I have recycling at home. I think it's awesome that we do it at home, do it at school, do it in your grandparents' house. Live the way you want the planet to be and be a good example, and don't give up, and go to those schools and be an advocate in your community. I am fighting for our grandchildren, all of them. And I think that it's admirable that you're all here. I wish there was 1,000 people watching this in our community. We've got 100,000 people that live in Contra Costa County, but it's way more now than it was 15 years ago when I started. It was like, are you crazy? Yes. Yeah. We got a planet that needs all of us. And Bob, I want to thank you and Dean and everybody that showed up here. Be an advocate, speak up. So what? I'm going to wear a red hat and keep screaming from the top of my lungs. Please change, eat more vegetables, treat a grandchild to a glass of water instead of a soda and ice cream. So that's
right.
My role model.
A wonderful finish for an excellent presentation. And I want to thank you very much, not just for coming here today, using some of your time to talk to the people, but also what you're doing with the kids at Mount Diablo Unified. I had the benefit, Cindy, and of coming and visiting you once, and some students. And one of the students came by, and he was at that time, I think, a junior in college. And he said when he started, he didn't really think much of what you were doing, yada yada yada. When he finished high school, he had lost about 75 pounds. He had learned what good food was versus bad food is. He never knew how to cook. He thought a meal was a bag of chips, and he had learned how to cook. And what you're doing to change young people's lives is simply phenomenal. And thank you very much for what you're doing. I've really appreciated our association over the years. So thank you very much for that. And for all of you that participated tonight in the Green Sofa Cinema series, we've hoped you learned a little bit about what vertical farming can do, and how you might be able to help expand and the understanding of vertical farming in our communities. And if you want to get more involved with our 4 supporting organizations, they're listed on the left side of the screen: 350 Contra Costa, Sustainable Contra Costa, Sustainable Rossmore, and Generation Green. I also want to let you know, and it's also on the screen, about next month's movie and discussion. And the movie is Can We Cool the Planet? And it's free on YouTube. We haven't yet decided, or the people who coordinate this, I shouldn't say we, I haven't yet decided on who the speaker should be, but they will in the next couple of weeks. And I'm sure it's going to be a very, very interesting presentation. Thank you again for participating, and enjoy the rest of your evening.